Here are some rules for giving stellar talks. Now, when you're giving a talk, you have to consider a couple of things. First of all, you only have about, in most cases, 10 to 15 minutes to finish your talk from beginning to end, and you don't get a lot more space than that to explain yourself. And the second one is that your audience doesn't talk to you. As opposed to being in an academic collaborative setting where you will be in front of a blackboard or a whiteboard discussing a problem with your peer, you don't know who's sitting in your audience. They don't talk to you until the question and answer session. And you have to kind of work based off of what you've prepared without a lot of feedback on the spot. So there are a couple of things you can do to make sure that your talk goes extremely well. First of all, you need to make sure that your talk is genuinely within the time frame that you've been given. An important thing that a lot of very good talk givers do is that they practice. Now, that doesn't sound ideal, but just imagine it's going to make it much less stressful and you're going to get a better talk out of it. So before a conference, a couple of weeks beforehand or before you have to give this talk, gather a couple of your colleagues in a room, run your presentation, set a timer, and afterwards, ask them for their feedback. Learn what they liked, what they didn't like, and where they think you should work a bit more. Not just on the presentation, but on your presentation, how you present yourself, how you talk. These are very important things that are going to help you to make your talk better. So it's definitely very advisable because otherwise every talk would be the same. You might as well read the paper. You need to make it a little bit special. Often what we see with good presenters is that they start their talk by sharing something personal. If you look at a presenter as a person instead of as a professional who's here to do their job, make the talk, and leave, you're gonna give them much more of your attention. So give them a personal joke, say how you've been enjoying the conference, or mention that you've been discussing something with a couple of collaborators and you're excited to share this work with them. You're going to reach a much wider audience that way. As far as soft skills for presentations go, you also need to make sure that when you do record yourself and you practice, you look for things that might annoy people. Sometimes you will catch yourself saying a lot, or staring into the ceiling when you don't know what to say, or at your shoes, or some people have a tendency to walk back and forth or left and right as they're talking, and this can get very distracting for an audience. So you have the opportunity to practice, to make it better, to try to do it as little as possible. Also, it's not a bad thing to look at some popular TED Talks on YouTube. You will notice a couple of things that these presenters do. Number one, they don't move around too much. Of course, we all have the urge to move and show things and interact with the audience. But if you just stand put, your feet at the width of your hips and looking ahead of yourself, shoulders back, proud, the audience doesn't mind this. This is a very good impression that they'll be getting. Also, and this might be hard depending on the lighting in the room, but it's really important to try to make eye contact with your audience members. If you're from a culture or personal background where you're not comfortable making eye contact, that's okay. We have a trick. You just need to look people in the forehead and they won't be able to tell the difference. So as you're talking, make eye contact with different parts of the audience. Look at the back rows, look at the front rows. The more eye contact you make, the more they'll be listening to you. And that's a good thing. We want that. We want people to listen, understand what you're doing, and be able to follow. So in that tune, always make sure to start your talk with the big picture. You don't want to get into the talk, introduce yourself, and go right into what your lab does. You need to tell them, in this talk, I'm going to tell you how we solved this question, and this question is important because this reason. Or perhaps we came up with this theory that could be applied to this, which means that we would be able to do these things. Give them a taste of why your work is important. And always make sure to include so-called checkpoints in your talk, which are points where you can wake or rouse the part of the audience that got lost. If perhaps they're not experts in this one thing that you were explaining and they stopped listening a little bit, then you go back and say, hey, you can come back now. This is the next part and you'll be able to pick up from here again. And of course, make sure to stick to the time limit, because what follows a talk is a question and answer session, and you definitely want to interact with the audience to learn not just what they liked and what they're interested in your research, but how you can make it better and what you can work on to do an even better job with both your professional work and your presentations.